Well, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody who is attending. My name is Robert Little. I'm the administrator for the Plant Industry Division, Department of Agriculture. We are here today for the workshop for proposed regulation amendments to Nevada Administrative Code Chapter 552. This is regarding bee removal. Today is October 17th, 2016. The time is 1 p.m., which is the scheduled time for this workshop. The location is simulcast between 3 different offices: our Las Vegas office, our Sparks office here, and our Elko office. Looks like we have people in our Las Vegas and Sparks office, but nobody in our Elko office at this time. This workshop has been properly noticed as required by the Nevada Open Meeting Law. The workshop is being recorded, and all attendees are required to sign in, and those who wish to speak are asked to identify themselves for the record. All participants are encouraged to engage in discussion. Therefore, there is no formal public comment period for this workshop. So I've already introduced myself, and I'd like to get introductions while everybody is here, so we kind of know who we're talking with, and then we can move forward from there. So I'll start with my left.
I'm Len Hedrick, Deputy Director, Department of Agriculture.
And then
I'm Ashley Jepson, Nevada Department of Agriculture.
Susan Anderson, just hobby beekeeper.
Perfect.
Yeah. Debbie Gilmore, house hunting from Yarrington.
Okay.
Andy Joyner, house hunting from Yarrington.
Excellent. And then if those that are in Las Vegas could identify themselves as well, that'd be great.
Brian Nakaguchi, Board of Ag.
Well, hold on 1 second. We got to get the volume turned up. We can barely hear you guys. CJ, we can hear barely. We need to turn the volume up here, or
Make it louder.
Jeff, I think you need to move the microphone maybe into the middle of the room there.
Okay. How about now?
That's much better.
There you go. Start all over. Brian Nakaguchi, Board of Agriculture.
Good afternoon, Brian.
Becky Shudenis, Burns Pest Elimination.
Lonnie Tucker, Orkin Pest Control, Nevada Pest Management Association.
Great.
Jimmy Stevenson, JS Pest Control, Chair of the Legislative Committee for Nevada Pest Management Association.
Jeff Knight, entomologist for the Nevada Department of Agriculture. Scott Chahoffus, Nevada Department of Agriculture.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. So what we have here is an amendment to require additional, well, it's not even require additional. We already, by NRS 552, when you are moving bees in a quarantine area, which we have in the southern part of the state because of the Afghanized bee quarantine that we have, you're required to obtain a permit through the Nevada Department of Agriculture to move bees into or outside of the actual quarantine zone. Because of some of the issues that we've encountered in the Las Vegas area, and some of you guys may or not be aware, we had a bee company that put themselves up, and this is not just because of this. We've had other things come up in the past as well. But we had a company that was advertising themselves as being bee removal specialists, and we are aware of no proper training that they've ever been through, or any classes or anything that they've actually done to be qualifying themselves as bee removal specialists. They went to remove a hive out of a local residence, and due to the way that they went about removing it and not having the proper protective equipment on, unfortunately they had a gentleman that got attacked that was on their crew, and the reports are varied. It's received anywhere between 500 and 1,000 different bee stings, and subsequently passed away about 3 weeks later in the ICU. So we had a lot of questions about, well, what type of a company was this? How were they licensed to do this type of work and things like that, which brought bee removal into kind of a question for the Department of Agriculture. Who's required to be licensed for various types of pest control work, and is this actually considered to be pest control work when it comes to bee removal? And so we went back and looked at the statutes, and we looked at that permit that was required, and working with our Deputy Attorney General, determined that for those companies that are solely in the business of doing bee removal. That's not like they're retrieving a hive and requeening it to bring it into their own active management or things like that. They're just doing bee removal. We felt that yeah, they do qualify to be or are considered to require licensing for pest control work. Now, that's not to say that, hobbyist beekeepers or, professional beekeepers that are out there that are keeping bees would also be required to license. But we feel that the hobbyists and the professional beekeepers are not in the business to be doing bee removal. That's not what their intent is. Their intent is to actually be, maintaining their own hives for whatever reason they want, if it's for wax, honey, a variety of different things. And they're not advertising to be out there as being bee removal specialists. Do we have hobbyist beekeepers that will remove hives from time to time? Oh yeah. And so we are looking at requiring those companies that are licensed or that are advertising to be bee removal specialists, and that's the sole purpose of their job of their mission there is to do that, to become licensed pest control operators in the state of Nevada to do that type of work. For those that are going to be removing bees, so hobbyists or professional beekeepers that will be removing bees only in the quarantine area in Nevada. And so that quarantine area, and Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that quarantine area is all of Clark County, parts of southern White Pine County, or I'm sorry, southern Lincoln County, and part of southern Nye County in the Pahrump area is the quarantine area. And so for those people that will be removing or moving bees, they will be required to get a permit through the Nevada Department of Agriculture. And so I think that kind of addresses what we're looking at, some of the issues that we've got going on here. And I'd love to open it up for discussion, or if anybody has questions or concerns of how this may affect anybody, be more than willing to open up some dialogue and see if this covers the needs that we think it is, or if we need to make this more stringent or look at other things. So happy to open it up. If you are going to speak, please, if you would identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Lonnie Tucker, Orkin Commercial. So let me make sure I understand this, because I've had less than 2 hours to look at this. The quarantine area only applies to beekeepers or bee removal companies that are contracted through the public to remove bees from a desired location. Is that correct?
Well, the quarantine area, as you stated, and maybe I'm not understanding the way that you're asking, the quarantine area applies to anybody in the state of Nevada that will be moving bees in or outside of the quarantine area. It applies to anybody, not just contracted or anybody. Anybody that was going to be moving a hive in or out of the quarantine area is affected by that. So not just licensed pest control companies or the such. Jeff, did you look like you were raising your hand there?
No, when you're done, I'm sorry. If you're
okay. So, Lonnie, does that answer your question of like who is required to adhere to the rules of quarantine?
Yeah, that's the part I don't understand. So I'm a licensed pest control operator. I get a call from a client that wishes to have bees removed from a wall in their business or their home. In Clark County, is all of Clark County considered a quarantine? Do I need to contact you first?
Yeah. Do you want me to answer, Robert, or you?
That'd be fine, Jeff. Go ahead.
I think I can clear things up. If you're within the Clark County, it's all quarantine.
Okay.
But as a pest control company that is licensed to do pest control work, I don't think this really affects you.
That's kind of where I was getting.
Is that the correct interpretation, Robert?
The only stipulation I put on that is, Scott, you could clarify. You have to be licensed in a particular category. What category would that be, Scott?
C2.
So you have to have your C2 category to do that type of pest control work. But yeah, you being licensed in Las Vegas, you're already covered as long as you have that C2 category under your license.
Okay.
Yeah, because the way I understood it earlier is kind of different than now that I have my question answered. I think I am okay with the rule.
Yeah, because this is Scott Giovannis, Nevada Department of Agriculture. Because you're licensed, you're essentially controlling the bees.
Right.
You're not gonna take them and requeen them and relocate them.
Right, okay.
Okay, as long as you're killing the bees and then removing them, as far as I know, you're not gonna be required to get a permit.
That is correct.
If we have a hobbyist that decides to go collect a swarm, and he's gonna transport them within the quarantine area or outside the quarantine area, then he's gotta get a permit from us to move that swarm from one place to another place.
Exactly, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Is it each swarm you have to get a permit, or is it a permit per year?
Yes.
Jimmy, would you mind stating your name for the record again?
Oh, sorry, Jimmy Stevenson, JS
Thank you.
Control. So my question was, is it a permit per hive or per year? And then obviously you do have some pest control companies that are removing hives and relocating, so does this apply to them or not?
Yes.
If removing,
It would apply to them if they are relocated. But I'm killing it.
Scott, could you please repeat your answer there? We had trouble hearing you on this side.
Nevada Department of Agriculture. The way that I interpreted this is that if a pest control company is going to collect the bees and move them and repurpose them for another purpose, yes, they would have to get the permit. And we did consider the Pest Control Association meeting that they have annually for the AHB to cover the appropriate training for those individuals.
And that permit is good for the whole year. It's not on a per hive basis. It's not on a certain job element. That permit's good for the year, correct?
Correct. Maybe I misunderstood that, but that was my understanding.
good for the year.
Lonnie Tucker, Orkin Commercial. I would also be, I would think we should be okay with it as long as the bee removal / hobbyist company has the proper training.
Yes.
I would think that would be important. They would have to show proof, right?
But this is Jeff. You want me, Robert?
Please, Jeff. And if you could also touch upon, we did talk to Nevada Nevada Pest Management Association on the classes that they were given, that would be applicable for sufficient knowledge.
Yeah.
Right.
So please, yeah.
So the way I see this is from the hobby, there's three groups of people. There's the licensed pest control group that's going out and doing pest control, that they're killing the colonies, and therefore they're under the C2 and they're done. There is the professional bee removal people that could be a pest control company that are collecting the bees, requeening, and doing something else with them. Those folks would need a permit. Then there's a hobbyist beekeeper or whatever you want to call them, that would go out and collect a swarm and repurpose them. Those guys, and they're not doing it, they're not advertising, they're not, they may be charging a little bit, but they're not doing, they're just doing a few here or there. It's not a business for them to do bee removal. It's a side part of their beekeeping. And they still would require a permit to move the bees within the quarantine zone. Also, if I interpreted it right, on the hobbyist side or the beekeeper side of things on this, if you're going to move a colony of bees from Laughlin to Logandale, you're going to need to have a permit. If you're going to be a beekeeper that's going to be moving bees around, you're going to need to get a permit.
But that permit would, within the quarantine area, that permit would cover you regardless of where you're moving them within that quarantine area, not just at one time, but anywhere within that quarantine area for the period of that year, correct?
Right. Now, if you move the bees out of the quarantine zone, and this doesn't really apply to anybody here maybe, but if you move the bees out of the quarantine zone, those bees have to get an inspection that determines that they are European, okay? And that then they can move outside the quarantine zone. If they're not, they're determined to be after-nights, they can't move out of the quarantine zone. Okay, that's sort of a side thing, doesn't really apply. But that's the permit allows you not only to collect the bees and move them, but to move your own bees from one part of the quarantine zone to another part. Right? Is that the correct way, guys?
Correct. I think, I just want to make a clarification though, Jeff. I think when you said that, you're describing the three different groups. The middle group you said was the bee removal company would require a permit. If they're advertising as bee removal...
No, they require to be, they require to be licensed.
Correct.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that clarification.
Yeah.
So, okay. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Jimmy Stevenson, Jazz Pest Control again. Clarification, we have on golf courses, we have landscapers and or maintenance guys that will kill bees in valve boxes and stuff like that. Are you going to require them to get a pest control license or just this annual permit?
So there's a two-folded thing on that, and many of you guys may be on the same email list or may not. Next Monday, we have another workshop. Well, it's not really a workshop. It's a public meeting that we're going to be having regarding pest control operating companies as well. That meeting is going to be talking about landscapers or golf maintenance companies that work under the 20% rule that we kind of have right now, where 20% of your business or less is pest removal, you get an exemption for licensing. We will be addressing that at the upcoming legislative session on who qualifies for that, because we feel that that's being exploited by larger companies that don't necessarily fall under that 20% rule. So as of right now, a landscaper that kills a swarm or a nest of bees in a box, they're not required at this time to be licensed or get a permit, because they fall under the exemption. We are trying to clear that exemption up when we get to the legislature this upcoming February. So right now, if that answers your question, right now, yeah, they would be exempt at this point because they fall under the Gardner exemption in NRS 555. Does that answer your question, Jimmy?
Yeah, it does. I'm just wondering if we could get around that on this particular one and say that exemption doesn't apply to bees or something.
Well, I mean, really, quite honestly, the thing that we're looking at is if it, when all of this would, if this is the language that we're going to go to, or whatever final language that we decide on that we go to get adopted, would have to go to our Board of Agriculture that does not meet until December. And then after December, it would then go to the Legislative Council Bureau for final adoption, which would be sometime in January, and quite frankly, because session's going to be happening really soon right after that, it could be extended even after that. So if it comes out that in session that we redefine what a gardener is, and they are then required to license, it would be a moot point to change it here. If for some reason, though, it does not change through the session, then we could look at bringing them into compliance as well when it comes to bee removal and controlling bees in the quarantine area. Does that sound reasonable, or?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
The NAC Department of Agriculture, yeah, we can't through administrative code NAC, which is what we're talking about here, we can't change NRS. NRS says that they have an exemption. They have an exemption. We can't change that in NAC. We hope to change that with the NRS that we have proposed, and that's what we'll be discussing in the public workshop, so everybody has an opportunity to comment and make sure we're headed in the right direction, because we're not trying to do anything behind anyone. We want total transparency and input from everyone. The one other comment I'd just make about this NAC is, in section 1, it says in a quarantine area, all bee swarms or colonies are deemed to be diseased. Existing statute, NRS, says you can't move a diseased beehive, swarm of bees, without a permit. All we've done is said, in a quarantine area, we're deeming all of them to be diseased because of the issue we had. The guy who went there to remove bees treated them as if they were normal honeybees, and they weren't, they were Africanized. Had they been treated as diseased bees and we'd had this permit, part of the requirement is first you'd have to have liability insurance, which you licensed applicators obviously do as well. But second, we would have insisted that they have the proper suiting for everyone involved. 2 of the 3 employees were suited. The 3rd guy on the ground was not properly suited. He's the fellow that died from what happened. So we want to make sure they're properly trained. They know that everyone has to be in a suit. They know that there shouldn't be children or people outside watching or any of that kind of thing. We need to make sure there's safety involved here, not just somebody saying, I'm just removing bees so it's harmless.
Yeah,
I have
Please.
a couple of comments.
Please do. State your name.
I'm Debbie Gilmore,
Thank you.
with Halls Honey and Mason Valley Beekeepers. First of all, the verbiage on this code does not specify a difference between companies and hobby beekeepers or beekeepers of any kind. It says a person, so it doesn't specify that you're targeting bee removal companies. So, first of all, you know, this looks like you're talking about me. Second of all, the quarantine area that is designated, I know that we are in northern Nevada and we don't right now deal with the Africanized honeybee, but you know, it's a behavior thing. You cannot identify Africanized bees by sight.
Jeff?
Yeah?
Identification of Africanized bees by sight? Wing length?
Well, there's some folks that say there can, but we deem that, no, you can't look at a colony and say whether
Perfect.
it's
Just wanted to clarify. Just
or not.
great, thank you.
Okay, so right now, there's a quarantine designated area, and I understand what that is. Who sets that area, and who makes that determination? I can go out to a colony of bees, and I can swear that it is Africanized. It is not Africanized, it's just the temperament of those bees, and you reclaim it. So, who is going to make that designation? And if it moves up north, then this is going to apply to us as well. So that's kind of, you know, the reason why. So another thing is the proper training. Who's going to do proper training? Who makes that decision what proper training is? And then as far as financial impact, I read this, that all of the beekeepers were contacted, etc. And again, I'm looking at this as a beekeeper, not knowing that you were supposedly targeting the companies. It's a huge financial impact. It says only a $15 fee. If you're going to require liability insurance, it just says show proof of appropriate liability insurance. What is appropriate liability insurance? What are your levels that you're going to be requiring? Andy and I just recently purchased liability insurance for our small business, and it's a substantial amount, and for small beekeepers, it's a huge impact. So that was a question I had about the insurance part. So if somebody were to go out to, and another thing, according to NRS 552, your definition of disease as it's defined will include every colony of bees in the state of Nevada as designated as diseased. Because it says bacteria, viruses, and invertebrate pests, which are varroa mites. Every colony in the state of Nevada will have varroa mites. So it will come under the term of diseased. So every colony in the state of Nevada is termed diseased, according to the NRSs here. So I see that there needs to be some working on the verbiage of this. and just things looked at better.
Hold on one second. Is this right over here?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, we're in. This one might go. I'm just gonna sit down.
Would you say ditto?
Okay, so we have another workshop that's going to be happening. We're just going to have to delay the next one? Or do we need to?
Yeah, no, you're probably gonna have to do this.
Okay. Scott?
Yes.
Sorry, housekeeping, really quick. Would you, so we have another workshop that's going to be happening that starts in about 5 minutes. Could you let Kathleen know that we're going to delay the start of that for, until we finish this one? And apologize that it's going to be running a little bit late, but we want to make sure we get everybody's comments heard, and we want to make sure that we get, everybody has a chance to speak, so thank you. Sorry, I missed the last one. So I wrote down a number of the questions that she had.
There is no training requirement. Lynn Hedrick, Deputy Director, Department of Ag. There is no training requirement. It says complete an application, show proof of appropriate liability insurance. The liability insurance, I agree, it could be expensive. It depends on what how many of these you're going to do annually, and a whole lot of issues. So we would look at the appropriate liability insurance. Might just be a rider for a one-day deal. I mean, it doesn't require a specific amount. I would hate to go in and write this up and say 100,000, 500,000, whatever the numbers are, and force you to buy that kind of number when we're talking about something. But at the same time, we feel that if somebody's going to go out and do this, and especially if they're going to charge any kind of a fee whatsoever, they should have appropriate liability insurance to do the work. The licensed applicators all have to have appropriate liability insurance. So,
So who makes that determination as to what is appropriate?
yeah, I think we would have to sit down and look at it on the application. Like I say, I hate to write down the number and say it was, again, picking numbers out of the air, 100, 500, or 300, or whatever. Because then we would definitely be making it very, very expensive. If you were saying, I'm going to go out and do this one time, and my insurance company says it'll give me a rider for one day for X dollars, and I'm covered on this deal, fine, we're easy. We're not trying to stop you from doing this. We're trying to protect the public. That's all we're doing.
Sue Anderson, I'm a hobby beekeeper, and I am I guess I get calls a lot that people know I'm a hobby beekeeper. I get calls that, oh, I've got bees in my dump trailer, I have bees, and, I've got a swarm of bees in my tree, and I go out and I'm suited up, and when you get that call to go and collect a swarm, it's not let me call my insurance company and let me do this, that, and the other. It's the love of the honeybee and helping that species move forward, because a swarm is basically how they reproduce themselves. I have never, in all the years I've been collecting swarms, had any issues whatsoever. And anyways, it's if you've ever been on a swarm collection or something, it's a very it's a wonderful, magnificent thing to watch. I truly do love it, and to have somebody tell me I have to get
Only if you were in the quarantine area.
all
Won't
right,
apply to you
but
at all.
like Debbie said, who is
Well,
going
we all have
to?
diseased bees, according to
No,
NRS.
within the quarantine area.
Okay, but this addresses more of the NRSs, not necessarily this. but
Right, and this is.
According to this, the Department of Ag can order us to burn or destroy our diseased bees, which all of them are diseased. So the Department of Ag can come out and make us destroy our diseased bees. And I know this is kind of away from this NAC, but according to the NRS disease definition, we all have diseased bees if it's in a quarantined area or not. So who makes that determination of the quarantined area?
The Department of Agriculture does.
So when will they deem Northern Nevada in the quarantined area because we have?
The quarantine area is the quarantine is an Africanized honeybee quarantine area. It's not all diseases, it's the disease of Africanized honeybee. So as far as the range goes for Africanized honeybee, that determines the quarantine area of the Africanized honeybee. Yes, sir.
Andy Joyner, Hoss Honey, on the range of the bees, I think what people don't address is we don't know the Africanized bees, Southern Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, parts of Louisiana, now they're in Southern Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in Southern Florida because they were, not that they were indigenous or moved there, but they were moved there by transport.
Mm-hmm.
Nevada, in Mason Valley, we probably have thousands of hives right now from California. We don't know, they could be from Texas, they could be from Arizona, I mean, they're everywhere.
Correct.
But they're not addressed. I mean, these bees, who knows if some of them are Africanized or not? I mean, they're sitting out, I mean, by the thousands. And so there's no one addresses the bees come in to our part of the state, whether they're healthy bees or not. I don't know, I mean, Department of Ag's not out checking their bees, they come and check ours, but they don't check the 10,000 other hives that are in our valley.
Right. So, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, the Africanized, so trying to answer a couple of questions all in one there. The Africanized honeybee quarantine is based off of surveys that we, in cooperation with the USDA, do to look at establishment, not necessarily traveling bees. Let's say if it's a bee company that's moving them for the almond harvest or into Nevada to overwinter them or back out to North Dakota or South Dakota or something like that. But it's based on where that we have found wild populations that exhibit Africanization. Is that correct?
Right. We periodically, I'll put it that way, put out traps. And initially when the bees came in, when AHP came into the state, we did a lot more trapping. They've essentially moved to those areas. We did some trapping several years ago and caught none that have advanced out of that quarantine zone. If we were to catch some or some were reported to us somewhere, then we would do the diagnosis of whether they're Africanized or not and determine if we need to move the quarantine zone. And that would be done, of course, in a similar process as to what we're doing now.
So, go ahead.
So
sorry, Jeff, I didn't catch you.
What we look at is if I get a report of aggressive bees that are outside of the quarantine zone, if at all possible, we figure out a way to maybe get a sample of it. And when I say aggressive bees, I mean bees that are and there is a temperament thing too to the other subspecies of the bees and the varieties. So you've got that to play with. I just got 3 samples from our guys that were out collecting samples for the National Bee Survey that they felt were more aggressive. As it turns out, when we did the quick and dirty check, they were perfectly European, basically, or more than, probably 100% or better European, okay, if you get it better than that. If we were to get bees, say, from Tonopah or Goldfield or further up on the eastern part of the state, then we would again look at them first from the simple wing length method. If that was inconclusive, there are some PCR methods that we can get done to determine whether they're Africanized or not. So that's how we go about it. And, anybody can, if you have bees that you think are Africanized, you can give us a call or bring it, and we can talk to you how to bring samples in. They do need to be properly collected to be useful.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So I think there's more questions here, and so we will let. Who wants to go first? We got a number of questions, so.
I'm concerned about.
Oh, sorry, could you please state your name?
Yes.
Thank you.
Myrna Barber, Great Basin Beekeepers in Carson City. I'm concerned about using the misnomer disease for these bees because it's misleading for people who are not in beekeeping, and it's confusing for those of us who are hobby beekeepers. It's inappropriate. They're not disease. They're a different strain of bee. And if there was an article in the Las Vegas paper that said the gentleman was killed or died of bee poisoning in about this summer in Vegas. And it says, if you want more information, press this button, call this, and you call the fire department, and you should listen to their definition of what they're talking about. It's not a disease, and there's a lot of recommendations there that are very good, but I find it confusing.
That's a good point.
If I'm not, Lynn Hetrick, Department of Ag, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have the NRS laying in front of me, but the definition of diseased is in NRS. It's been there for a long time, probably a decade or more if I had to guess. I think the important part here is we're not going to be able to go in and change NRS in this session. For us to change anything, we have to submit our bills as an executive branch agency to the governor's office, and they accept what they will process or what they won't process. There's nothing submitted to change the NRS definition of disease. I think we tried to word this so it would cover that by saying diseased in a quarantine area. So it would take both, that they would have to be recognized by us, and disease does include in the definition a genetic difference that points out that they are indeed Africanized or something like that. And I'm far from expert in bees. So the Africanized bees are covered under the definition of diseased. I agree, it may cover more things than it should, but it does cover Africanized, and it is only in a quarantine area. So that the permit would be required. There would be no liability insurance, so you can collect swarms all day long. Not going to appear. If you're not in a quarantine area, it's not going to affect you whatsoever. If the issue is safety in Las Vegas, where we know we have Africanized bees, and we have a person who went out and didn't determine in advance whether or not they were Africanized or whether they were aggressive or anything else. Didn't have any liability insurance and attempted to do a collection that resulted in a death. And we're trying to address that and say, if you're not a licensed company, then you at least need to come in and let us know that you want to move bees and under the law in a quarantine area, and prove to us that you're knowledgeable enough and have adequate insurance to do that. That's really what we're trying to say here. We're not trying to be onerous in any way.
But that's not what you're saying here.
Well, it's in a quarantine area and it's diseased bees by definition.
But it's a person. It's a person. It's not an agency. It's not a company. It's a person.
You need to look at the definition of person in statute. The person is an agency, a business, an individual. It's defined as all of those things.
So then what makes this not pertain to me?
It does pertain to you if you collect in a quarantine area and they're diseased bees.
Okay, so right now there's an influx of commercial beekeepers, all from the southern states. They come as far as Florida, going into California. A lot of them are going through Nevada to avoid ag stations. You have all of these commercial bees, 400 plus colonies or hives on one truck, and there's many, many trucks coming through the southern part of the state. You don't know if they're Africanized. Andy and I were just called out to an accident this last week where a truck had rolled over or lost all of the beehives. And if that were to happen in southern Nevada, there's millions of bees that are loose. And you don't know if they're Africanized, you don't know if they're European bees. When we went out there, out of 400, we might have been able to count maybe 20 swarms that had come out of those 400 hives. So if that were to happen in southern Nevada, you have thousands of Africanized bees out there. And so this kind of is like, I don't understand why you were trying to put this into effect when there's so much going on out there that this is kind of like a needle in a haystack kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but you have bees coming and going lots, and
Again, not to interrupt you, but
that's okay.
Lynn Hetrick, Department of Ag. Again, this pertains to somebody who is going to collect or relocate within the area. And it doesn't pertain to, I mean, theoretically, somebody who's moving bees through our state should be checking with us, but we don't have border stations, as you pointed out. And if they're going to travel through a quarantine area, they're supposed to check with us, but there's no way to enforce that. We couldn't possibly put enough people out there to ever do it, and the cost would be prohibitive to everybody involved with bees, so it's
So
not going to
that
happen.
commercial beekeeper who lost the load in southern Nevada could not collect what he could and then take them on to California.
This is for somebody who's going to go collect a swarm that is invading somebody's property. It doesn't pertain to an accident where you try to control a group of bees or a swarm of bees because there was an accident.
But that doesn't.
But that person that's coming through the quarantine area is required to get a permit to come through the quarantine area. You're not allowed, and granted, and Jeff will get right to you in just a second. You're not allowed to come through, to move bees through the quarantine area without obtaining a permit through the Nevada Department of Agriculture. Has that happened in the past? Not necessarily.
Is that in NRS?
Yes, it is. Correct, Jeff?
Well, Jeff and I, Nevada Department of Agriculture, I think as you're moving through, if you're a truck driver and you're coming from Utah or Arizona and you're moving through Nevada, you're not stopped, okay? As long as you don't stop, I don't know that a permit would be required because those bees have not been in the state of Nevada in a sense, okay? If the beekeeper were to unload them, okay, for any period of time, then they would be required to get a permit before they moved them any further.
So
Okay?
if the truck driver,
That's the way I picture it.
if the truck driver was coming through Nevada and made a stop in Las Vegas, not to unload them, but let's say he was at the end of his 8-hour, 10-hour shift and pulled over and shaved them up, that stop is going to require them to then get a permit, correct?
Well, I think we'd have to look at that because I don't. If they were to stop and let the bees out, because these bees are all netted, or they should be at least. If they were to stop and let the bees out for any length of time, then yes. But if he was just stopping for the night for a break, then I wouldn't see that you would need to try and permit them. It'd be a nightmare for women. If they hit the ground, if we follow a lot of our other quarantines, and the philosophy in our other quarantines is if that infested, or in this case, if the clean stock were to hit infested ground, it then becomes infested. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that's where I would say, in an accident type of thing, again, it's an accident. It's a whole different, to me, the whole movement thing is a whole different thing than the bees being somewhere and then being moved within the quarantine zone, or from in the quarantine zone to out of the quarantine zone. Okay? Through it, I think we have to probably think about.
Thank you. I think that's Chris in the back left there.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, Chris Bramley, Clark County Vector Control. Three topics. She was first talking about, looking at your sheet, line 3, a person may obtain a permit, and then you've got ABC. Don't you think that there should be, and maybe it's on your permit, that something that says that they have the experience and the ability to collect and relocate bees? I think it should be clearly defined that we're asking them to do that. I was at that scene where the gentleman died, And I can tell you right now, that gentleman had no business being there. And secondly, you have the proficiency of doing the job should be demonstrated. Whether on the permit, if they just say, yes, I can do it, and you have no clue, and then this person goes out, no matter how much money they take out as insurance and they cause a death, I don't think that that's the right way to go. So, I kind of just think that showing proficiency in doing the job is a correct thing to do. So for the ladies that are in northern Nevada that are not in the quarantined areas, this kind of training for them would clearly define what a quarantined area is, what a diseased bee is, so that they know right from the very beginning what they're going to need to continue to do their job. Thirdly, when you talk about transporting bees, I was at another job, Jones and Sunset. Gentleman's got a truck full of bees, not netted, parked the truck. I get the call from Metro. It takes me 45 minutes to get out there. By the time I get out there, there's 100,000 bees off this truck, in our right-of-way, in the bushes along the road. I mean, it was crazy, and the guy was nowhere to be found. His truck is running. So I'm in the process of trying to figure out what we're going to do. Who do I call? What do we do? The guy walks up and says, well, I was just going to go to California. I was going to leave my truck here and take my personal car and go to California. I said, wait a second, you can't, what's that going to take you? 14 hours, 15 hours? I mean, you can't. I've got people swerving, crossing the yellow line, potential head-on accidents because of that type of an issue. So I think that's another thing. I know you can't beat on everyone and they're required to have a permit, but that should be something that's looked at. That these gentlemen, most of them do an excellent job. I've been on several accidents, but they do an excellent job transporting bees through our area. But some of them don't, and they take advantage, and it's quite interesting how many calls I've moved on like that. And I had to, unfortunately, destroy a lot of bees because there was nothing else to do. There was nobody to call to help collect, wrangle, bring them in. So if you have this list of qualified people to do that, and maybe you qualify them on a list like you do other things, then the public could call a hotline and have a qualified list of bee removal experts that they don't have to worry about. The gentleman that died at that scene, the guy that was running that operation, those bees were 30 feet off the ground and his ladder was 26 feet long. So he was tied off on the eaves, shaking the ladder, causing a problem. He had all his drill motors up on the roof, and the moment he started a drill motor to cut, he sent those bees into a frenzy. He told me he didn't know they were Africanized. He didn't know how to determine that they were Africanized. He had partial PPE on. The other guy had partial PPE on, and the guy that died didn't have any. So, I'm here to help the state in any way that I can through our agency in these types of issues in Las Vegas, because you're right, it is a serious threat. Swarms are attacking people, backyards. I've gone to many of these calls, worked with the fire department, worked with Metro, and I'm with you of trying to figure out some way to make sure that these people don't. The lady that lived across the street was frightened. She called her husband, he called me. She's afraid to leave the house for 3 days because of that incident. She watched it unfold. So, I sincerely hope we can figure out a way to make sure the people that are doing the removal, and maybe that's the definition too of what a removal is. I don't know that you should be removing bees from the 3rd story of a roof structure where you really don't have good access to get the bees. I even asked the gentleman if he went inside to listen to see if he could take them from inside the house. He goes, oh no, I don't do that. So it was quite evident that there's an issue. So any education or any way that we can help these wranglers, collectors, hobbyists to better do their profession, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Chris.
Lynn Hetrick, again, Department of Agriculture. When we first wrote this, we wrote it up, basically what Chris said, we wrote it up that you had to take a training course, you had to come in and do all kinds of hours of study, you had to essentially obtain a pest operator's license, would have cost hundreds of dollars. Every one of you sitting here would have been really angry. And we said, no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to get somebody to come in and say, look, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how to remove a swarm of bees. I know how to do it safely. I know how to determine if they're Africanized. I can fill out your application and tell you all these things, and I will have appropriate insurance. And that eliminates immediately the fly-by-night who just puts his name in the paper and says, I'm a bee removal company, call me, I'm a professional. And he has no training, he has no background, he's filled out no application, he doesn't suit people up properly. He did nothing right. He said, I don't know, I didn't know they were Africanized, don't even know how to figure it out if they are or are not. That's what we're trying to address, and we're trying to do it as cheaply as possible. $15 a year covers the cost of us doing the paperwork and having somebody come in here and fill out a form and somebody review it. We're not trying to make this onerous for you folks, we're trying to protect the public. And that's really what we're trying to do here. We've tried to limit it to the quarantine areas where we know we have Africanized bees. We didn't want to get into northern Nevada where right now we don't know for a fact that we have bees in multiple locations that are established. We're trying to do it as reasonably as we can. And we understand every time there's a regulation passed, somebody doesn't like it. And we get it. I'm not a big government person either. But safety we have to address. And I think what Chris was just talking about points it out pretty clearly. We can only do it to the degree we can do it. I can't put enough people out there to stop every truck that doesn't have a net on it going through Clark County. It's just not going to happen. So, but those things we can address reasonably is what we're trying to get to here. That's what we're trying to accomplish.
And if I could just, Chris Bramley again, vector control, I would add that if I can help training-wise, you know, I have a facility, if you've got people in Clark County that want to come in and go through some kind of training with our office, something that we could, you and the state, we can agree on, that we could at least, because I can come and say to you, yeah, I've been doing it for 20 years, and I have this, that, and the other, and unless there's some kind of documentation that he has been doing it, you know, we put ourselves at risk. So again, I mean, I would volunteer to anybody that's in Las Vegas that if we could put some kind of, you know, a couple of hour class together, you know, I'm more than willing to provide a space to bring people in. You know, I live in this community, I have a ton of family in this community, and anything that I can do to help make sure that these people know what they're doing, you know, we're willing to do without cost.
That's awesome, Chris. Thank you very much for that. And I don't know what part of some of the discussions you may have been privy to talking to Scott. I know you keep in close contact with Scott and Jeff. We did talk to Nevada Pest Management Association there, Southern Nevada Pest Management Association down there, and they do keep the swarm list, as you know, down there for the Clark County area. And they had, you talked about potentially, holding classes as well. And I'd love to see some coordination if the two of you guys, two entities would be willing to put on some really great training classes. It would be awesome.
Did we install Richard Hicks as like the head of that at the last B meeting? I know he was there, and I think we nominated him to be that side of this organization. And since he's my former supervisor and knows our facility well, you know, I have no problem with working with Richard and making sure that we can present something that, you know, the state will accept for these people to come in and put down on their application, check, yes, we've done whatever the course title may be, and bring people in and do that. Yeah, no, that would, you know, we kind of talked about that at the previous meeting at the old facility, and anything that I can help facilitate that in, you know, I'm more than willing to do.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely recommend that, and I'd like to see us move in that direction, barring, you know, whatever eventually the approved language is and the direction we want to go. And I think that, you know, we're kind of in there. I think there's maybe some hang-ups on some words that maybe need some additional clarification. You know, when you were talking about a person, who is actually a person, we have that well defined within another statute that I could provide what a person is. And then as far as, you know, I think that was it. That was the only.
I think that the point is well made. Again, Lynn Hetrick. I think the point is well made about the diseased definition, and I'd love to be able to fix it for you, except we can't get to Ann Arbor, whether we like it or not this time. We tried to limit it to diseased within a quarantine area, and so it's not going to pertain right now to anybody in northern Nevada. in Southern Nevada, we really think that they ought to look at every swarm as being diseased to prevent this kind of an accident occurring again. We think they should come get a permit, and especially the unlicensed folks. I mean, these licensed pesticide control operators, they're not an issue. They know what they're up against. They have liability insurance and so on a regular basis. I think this fellow, Chris would probably know, but I think this fellow was actually a contractor who was doing beekeeping on the side. He was trying to collect the swarm. I don't blame him. I think it's a wonderful thing that we can collect them, requeen them, save the bees. It's awesome, and we want to save bees, obviously. That's why we're trying to be able to do some of this, is so we get honest people out there and safe people out there and get them done.
And what the gentleman was saying in Las Vegas, I don't see it as a bee issue. It's a people issue. It's not a bee issue. So you put regulations, more regulations on beekeepers and bees when it's not the Africanized bees. I mean, people know that they're there. They know that they need to be protected, and it's not a bee issue. So again, you know, this is identifying the Africanized honeybees as the culprit of all of this, and you know, Africanized honeybees, there are good qualities to Africanized honeybees, and this is just pointing it at Africanized honeybees again when it's not the bees. It's a people issue, and I don't know how you fix the people issue, but I'm on board as far as the public safety. I understand that totally, but it wasn't the public that was threatened by that person.
I would disagree that the public wasn't threatened. That could have gone any other way than it did if somebody had been walking by, or somebody came out of their house at the same time when the gentleman that was there got attacked. They could have just as easily been attacked. So it does become a public safety issue as far as.
Well, if they were doing it properly,
Correct.
the public would not have been threatened. So again, it goes back to a people issue.
But how else do we get to the people? We can't regulate the bees. The bees don't come in and sign
Well,
an
you're-
application, and so we can only regulate the public, and that's what we're trying to do here. It says the person shall not collect, transport, whatever, without coming in and at least telling us in this area that they're going to do it and get a permit and prove to us that they know what they're doing. And that we are trying to address the people. And that's where we're going. We totally agree with you. We're not trying to stigmatize the bee. The bee's already been stigmatized, frankly, in public in Clark County. That's done. It's been done a long time ago. The issue is we can't have just anybody go out and say, I'm going to collect bees and I get $150 and I collect the bees.
Well, that's what, and I'm not bad-mouthing the pest control people at all, but they're not trained in collecting these swarms either. So, you know, most of them don't know anything about honeybees or bees in general, and they're going out to either exterminate or to capture these swarms. So I'm not sure that this even addresses that, but those are just some of the thoughts that I've had, and I'm not trying to be critical or defensive or
That's
any
why
of
we
that,
have
but-
these meetings, and we appreciate the input and the fact that people come. We had 3 more this morning, nobody showed up. We appreciate it when people care now.
All
We
you
don't
have
hold
to do
these
is say
meetings to
something
listen
about
to ourselves.
beekeepers and they'll show up.
So, no, and, so you pest control guys, how much collection do you do of bees, swarms of bees? Do you collect any bees?
No, we treat all of them as diseased or Africanized bees and protect
Destroy.
the public.
Right.
And Sue Anderson, hobby beekeeping is keeper, but I've never charged. I don't even know a hobby beekeeper who would charge to go. I mean, it's to help the bees.
Right. And we understand that.
And this isn't limited to people who charge. This is that, but I believe the gentleman who was out there, and again, Chris might know, but I think he actually was charging to remove the
He
bees.
probably
He
was.
said he was a professional bee removal.
Which is never stated by a hobby beekeeper.
No.
Right.
It's-
Well, he was putting himself
show
out
up
for
at-
hire to be a professional bee remover.
And he wasn't, apparently.
And he wasn't, apparently. And that's what the bigger issue is,
Yeah.
is he's advertising as being a pest control operator, essentially. Somebody that's in the business to do control work. Regardless if he was collecting them to requeen them or if he was doing just straight extermination. He was in the business to remove or control bees.
Holding himself
out for
So
hire.
is there a regulation that can be put into place for someone who makes that claim, or?
It's covered.
It's covered. He becomes a PCO, he becomes a licensed pest control operator, he has to be licensed.
But it doesn't come under this NAC.
Yeah, but it's
It
in,
comes under pest
It's already
control.
in 555 pest control.
yeah, pest control. If they know themselves out to control, then they are a pest control operator and have to be licensed. So that's.
So then why do you need this NAC?
Because we're trying to get to the fact that we have people who are not holding themselves out to be pest control operators. He called himself a professional bee removal service. He didn't hold himself out to be pest control. We're trying to get to that person, and we're trying to do an annual fee where you'd walk in and just say, look, I filled it out, here's my application, I'm Sue, and I know how to do this, and yes, I'm covered, I've been trained in the past, I've done this for 25 years, never had an issue, and I call my insurance company, and the guy says, yeah, to do occasional bee removal, I don't think it's gonna be all that expensive to get somebody to give you a writer to do this, quite frankly. And I think we need to find that out and maybe, have that looked at and see. But, we've got to make sure that somebody is doing it with not just the average person will walk in and $15 a night go out and not have insurance. And because then they're not applying to anybody to prove they have any capability.
Right, but then all of a sudden, you're a hobby beekeeper, you're trying to turn us into a business that requires liability insurance and everything else. I mean, when you show up and it's your equipment and you're suited and you're handling the bees carefully and people aren't standing around watching you do this, all of a sudden it just leaves that big check. About right now, you're only saying it in 3 counties, but to remove the ability for just a person like me to be able to do that. And it's not like I have a bazillion bees or anything. I literally half the time give these bees to other beekeepers. But it's a little nervous because it's like it opens up the door for that. And then what happens up here? Anyways, it just seems like the rules weird.
And I know Chris had a question, and Jeff, you got a question too. Did you want to, hold on one second. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff Knight, Department of Agriculture. This whole thing revolves around the fact that in northern Nevada, it's perfectly safe and fine to go out and collect a swarm of bees, okay? The only people that have ever charged in northern Nevada in my 30 years or 35 years of being involved around this sort of thing are people doing what we call interiors, where they're actually removing the bees from a wall or something like that. We had one person at one time that would do that, and they would charge. In southern Nevada, it was the same story until the Afro-Nice bees moved in, and then it became a business to basically remove or collect bees. And we're to the point with it now, even though they've been here almost 16 years, 15 years, something like that, 98, that we need to separate out the people that are going out and collecting them to be beekeepers and the people that are going out and saying they're removing them or collecting them, and in reality, it's just like that guy that was doing it. With the setup that I was told that he had, none of those bees would have ever survived. And the temperature that was going on and the equipment that he had, those bees were dead. The ones that got into the vacuum cleaner were dead when they were there. So there's a fallacy of whether they're saving the bees or not, really. And I think that's the issue that we're getting at. We've never had a problem with the pest control companies that have been doing Afro-Nice bee control, if you will, or extermination for the last 16 years. It's only because the people that are in this area that's all they're doing is a business of bee removal. If there's a hobbyist that wants to do it down here, and he wants to go out and collect a couple swarms and requeen them, great. But if there's somebody that's all he's doing is going and collecting the bees and, you know, as he goes around the corner, gets rid of them somehow, you know, those are the people, and they're charging for this and advertising for it. Those are the guys who are really kind of after this thing. But we do need to look at the hobbyists that if they go out there and they're going to do something with these bees that are a whole different breed of bees, then I think that's what we're aiming at, if I'm not mistaken.
Scott, you wanted to add to that?
Just housekeeping, we have one guy here that wants to make comment on your seed proposal, but he's not sure he's going to be able to hang out much longer.
Okay, I mean, so, and I know, so we're already, we have a whole bunch of them stacked on top of each other today, and I want to get everybody heard. So at this point, we have, at 1:30, we were supposed to have a workshop on pesticides on seed, and then at 2 o'clock, we were going to have a workshop on industrial hemp. I know we have a gentleman in the lobby here in Sparks for hemp, and we have a gentleman on the pesticide for seed in Las Vegas. It sounds like there's probably still more discussion or not on this topic. If it is, I would like to maybe stall this one for a minute, have the other two come in and make their public comments, close those, and open this one up if you guys are willing to do that. Or at this time we can close this one. I'm leaving it up to you guys if there's more discussion. A lot of discussion is being mainly here in the Sparks office, but maybe there's still even more comments that need to be made in Las Vegas. So I want everybody to have their opportunity to speak. So is there more discussion that people would like to have on the but on the bee removal workshop at this time? Because if there are, I'd like to solve this one and yeah.
Hey, everybody here will be here for the 3 o'clock one also.
Okay. We have one at 3 o'clock on pest control. So would you guys like to stall this one to continue this discussion?
I guess my only question would be a clarification on the term person. And I see that NRS for bees and apiaries does not identify the definition of person. Mm-hmm. So that is, I guess, my only question that I have left.
It's in NRS 555. 555. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah.
And we'd be happy to accept written comments or any submission you want. And suggestions on language, we're open. That's why we have these workshops. We're, you know, if we can somehow, we've tried to limit this to disease in a quarantine area. We've done everything we can to make it inexpensive as possible. We didn't force you to do classes and a license, full-blown pesticide license and all those things which would cost hundreds of dollars. We've tried to make it reasonable. We understand your concerns, but we're trying at the same time we have to look at public safety. And I think Chris made a valid point there that we've got to look at public safety.
Okay, so just clarification because I'm not very smart about these things. So if you have a definition in 555, it also pertains to 552?
It'll pertain to 552 in that 555 is the pest control operation, which is basically what this is.
So knowing a little bit about NRSs, so if you have an NRS 555 that defines person, you could have NRS 432B has a different definition of a person. Mm-hmm. So how does the person definition from 555 goes to NRS 552?
At the bottom of what person is, it will say it attaches to what other chapters.
Yeah, and it pertains to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find the definition for it, and it's difficult to read. Yeah. Read it on your phone. Yes.
Jeff Knight, Department of Agriculture. You know, if there's some more concerns outside of this bee removal section, if people want to get together and discuss it, I'd be happy, or up north, I'd be happy to do that. And if we need to change some of the regulations, we can start working on it. It's a process, but it can be done.
We're happy to discuss it with you. Yeah. That's why we have these meetings, and we appreciate the input. So, and we understand the questions. There are always questions.
Person defined.
You know, so, but we'd be happy to sit down with you and discuss it if we can come up with a better way to word this. that we can do without violating NRS.
Person includes a government, a governmental agency, and a political subdivision of a government. That's all it is defined there. But yeah, we'll have to look into that a little more. Yes, sir.
Joe Barber, Great Basin Beekeepers. What is the process for changing one of the statutes or the wording in that statute? Can we, as beekeepers, get together with our representatives and so forth and make an appeal to change the word disease, person, so that it will be compatible with how we're functioning and operating as beekeepers?
Definitely, you can contact your representative and ask them to carry a bill in regard to bees. They have limited numbers of bills, and they may or may not take it on, but yes, they can do that, and yes, you're welcome. They encourage you to do that. They like to talk to constituents, try to put in something that makes a difference for people who are actually out there in the real world. They like that. I was in the legislature for 14 years. We loved it when people came in and said, hey, can you fix this for me? I have a problem here, and this statute doesn't work. And yeah, you really enjoyed working on those, and those are fun. So yeah, I would contact them.
Part of the reason, I'm listening and trying to absorb everything that I can because I'm new to the state and this whole thing, but I've been in beekeeping for quite a few years. And we collected well over 30 swarms from the capital area this last year. And I don't want to discourage our club members and beekeepers from being able to save the bees and collect those, because those are really viable colonies of bees, and they're great for us to increase the genetic diversity among our bees and keep them healthy and acclimated to this environment. And I would sure hate to have people get discouraged with this kind of wording, even though we're not in this quarantined area, but they would be hesitant to get involved and say, oh no, I can't do that because I don't have the proper license to do it. And it's just a collection thing. But we do have people that are called to remove bees from buildings by removing an outside wall and taking that down. And is that going to be classified as somebody that needs to be licensed to do that?
No, not under this NAC. It's not under this proposal, no. As long as you're outside that quarantined area, it's...
And how well defined is a quarantined area? How well publicized is that?
It's very well defined. It's in NAC. It's went through the exact same process this is. Went through a workshop, went through a hearing, went through changes.
But it looks like that was updated in 2015, and I've been pretty much in the front of beekeeping, huh, Jeff, in the last probably 10 years, and I was never notified of anything about a quarantine area. Maybe because I'm in northern Nevada, but that's kind of why I'm a little bit leery, is these quarantine areas are being put into place without the beekeepers' awareness of those.
I think, and I'd have to go look, I believe you're right that 554 was updated in some language, and I don't remember it. I have to go look at my book. I worked on all that language, but it didn't pertain to changing the size or the location of the quarantine area. It pertained to something else within that segment of the statute, and it gets shown as 2015. I'd have to look and see exactly what that wording was, but
Jeff?
I can do that for you.
When we set the quarantine area, have we ever expanded it since its original distinction?
Yes, but it was very shortly after the original, when we found the bees in AHB and Caliente and Hyco in that area, that's when we expanded it up. And you'd have to look at, I don't have it in front of me, the quarantine, it would tell you when we did that, but I think it was shortly after, within 4 or 5 years of the original quarantine, that we expanded it past the Clark
It
County
went into
border.
effect January 17, 2002, and then updated 9 of 2003.
So yeah, that would be 4 or 5 years after the original. So
2003 was
Yeah.
when it was changed.
It was updated.
It was put in effect 2002, updated 2003.
So that was about 7 years.
Yeah.
So a year.
The 2015 change didn't affect the quarantine area. It was my only.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to cut this off, but I do have some people that are waiting. Do we want to, just a consensus, do we want to table this and come back after the two I've got, or Jeff, you had mentioned, to work on this a little bit more. I think following protocol, we would have to call another workshop.
Well, hey, Robert, I wasn't talking about this particular part. I was talking about more about the concerns that Debbie and others have expressed.
In NRS.
The other NRSs and the other parts of the NAC that we made. That's what I was, and like the term disease and stuff like that.
Okay.
Maybe we ought to get together and sit down and, as a group and hash out what needs to be done there.
We still can accept comments though.
Oh, yeah.
On this, and we still can change the language on this. There'll be another hearing in regard to this. That's why
This is
there's
just
a
a
workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Workshop is for you to come in and tell us what you're concerned about, exactly what you've done, and we appreciate that. Now there'll be a period of time where we have to renotice. You'll all get another notice, and they'll say, now we're going to have a hearing. And the hearing's more formal. We'll go through it formally, are we going to change anything or not? And then after that, we submit it to board approval, and then it goes to the Secretary of State for filing.
And during that time, we definitely be contacting each other and working on the language, and working it to where we think it fits best, before we renotice for the hearing for adoption, is what that would be. So
your suggestions
would be very well welcomed. And I want to just make sure before we conclude that everybody did sign in, that we have everybody's contact information. I mean, you're here probably because you got the notice anyway, but I want to make sure we captured everybody's contact information. And as we work to, if we're going to revise it a little bit more and make clarify some issues that it looks like that we have, that we work together as a group, and we get it to where everybody's can be comfortable with what and at least understand where it is. And quite frankly, Chris brought up a lot of really good comments down in Las Vegas, where they're dealing with this issue, and that's really what we were trying to handle, was the public safety end of it. And we can, we're trying to keep Northern Nevada beekeepers out of it as best we could, and that's the way that we wrote the language. But if to satisfy some concerns that are there, definitely love to look at it a little bit more. And Chris, quite honestly, some of the suggestions that you made, we'd like to probably discuss this a little bit more with you and make sure that we get the language as far as how you were talking about the proficiency and some other things, to make sure that we get the testing correct, or not the testing, but the knowledge base, and make sure that we understand. And if we have to build, working with you and Nevada Pest Control Management Association on building classes that then we could recommend for beekeepers to go to, that would be fantastic. And so if we want to put that in the NAC, or that's part of the permit, we'd definitely like to work with you a little bit more on that as well.
No, and that's fine. And then the other two comments that I thought about were, when we're talking about insurance, where does the homeowner that's hiring the removal specialist, where does their insurance play on it? Maybe that's something to look at, that the homeowner can call his insurance company and say, hey, look, I'm having these bees removed from my house. I need a rider to protect my neighbors. And then the other point was out the window. I don't remember now, but.
Your comments are welcome.
Because not only does the removal specialist have liability in this, the property owner had liability up until the removal specialist got there, because as many incidents as I've seen, somebody starts a lawnmower in their backyard, the hive gets disturbed, it flies over the wall, and attacks the neighbors, and then the guy says, well, the bees have been there for 10 years. Never more a problem. So, that may be something to look at on the insurance end as well.
That's excellent. Great points there. Does anybody else have any, a quick parting comment? I'd really like to, get to the next one, because we do have people waiting. Is there anything else that anybody didn't get a chance to bring it up, that wanted to, make it out known now? Excellent. Well, everybody, we will be in contact with you as we revise these things, and we will move forward from there.
Thank you.
So thank you guys very much. Thank you to everybody for participating and showing up today. Really appreciate it.
Adjourn your meeting.
And I'm going to adjourn the meeting at this time.
And then, if you'll wait just a second, let me give you cards, so you can contact me via email. We'd be happy to have your comments written.
Actually, can you see if Jay or Sean are there to redo this computer for me? I don't know what the conference room signing is. Okay, so we have nobody for pesticide on seed right now. We have 2 people for hemp, one in Las Vegas, one here.
Yep.
So I'm gonna take them out of turn. We're gonna do hemp first,
Sure.
get these guys out, then we'll do the seed one, and then we'll move
I
on.
love it. Should we invite him in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, brother.
It's all right.
I can't, it did that, I locked up, and so I can't stop it. So I need to stop this one so I can start the next one. What is the,
There is no password.
oh, just sign in, just, oh, hell, if I know that, now I'm just stop. And so,